Let me ask you this. Somebody said to me the other day, look, there's no question about it. The Trump presidency on a foreign policy basis will be defined by North Korea. I mean, we talk so much about Russia, and yet look at the aggressiveness coming out of North Korea right now. What should the U.S. be doing about this right now?
So North Korea, of all of the crises that exist on the world stage right now, North Korea is one that you can say Trump has probably contributed somewhat to, because he's decided, unlike other presidents, that he needs to take this on, right? Other presidents have said, it's too hard, I'll kick it down the road. Right? It's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. And Trump has said, you know what? Actually, red line. You are not going to develop missile capability to hit nukes the United States. Period. I'm going to stop you. And you've seen the reaction. The reaction from Kim Jong-un, July 4th, is ICBM, thank you very much,
yeah, exactly.
Right? And the Chinese are not going to get the North Koreans to the place the Americans want.
Is that our only lever, the Chinese?
It is the only lever short of military strikes against North Korea.
What else can we do?
Very little, and that's why presidents haven't dealt with it. Now, give Trump credit for addressing the fact that this is a serious issue and one that does undermine American security directly. And it's not just about nukes, it's also cyber capabilities. North Koreans keep engaging in bigger and bolder hacks against the world, and they're making a lot of money doing it. So, but if what this means is that the U.S.-China relationship, which the magic of Mar-a-Lago, that was by far the best meeting that Trump has had in foreign policy since he's become president, that is now hitting a tipping point. And North Korea is the precipitant. It's the reason why we're going from, I like this guy, I can work with him, to, hey, he tried, but now we're going to have linkage in the other direction. Trump made very clear that if China helped with North Korea, that Trump was prepared to work with the Chinese more closely on trade issues and the rest. Meaning, if North Korea becomes a bigger problem, as they are, that the U.S. and China are heading for confrontation on trade. And unlike Russia, where we don't really care about the Russians economically, their entire economy is smaller than that of New York City. Their entire economy.
Wow.
With China, they're going to be the largest economy in the world in very short order, under the Trump administration in likelihood. And if that happens, right, we start whacking the Chinese, that affects the cost of goods in our stores. That affects the value of stocks in our portfolios. That really matters to the people that are watching this show right now. So for all of the excitement of the Putin-Trump meeting, what your viewers should really be caring about is what's happening with China right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in terms of trade and these sanctions recently put on Chinese companies that the U.S. has done, we talked earlier whether or not that's a big deal. I mean, do you expect any more big moves from the U.S. to prod China to do something? I mean, China trade with North Korea is up 40% this year. So in all of the talk about what China is going to do to help rein in North Korea, they've actually increased their trade with the country.
You know, almost 90% of North Korea's imports and exports are China. Right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, no one else can do anything here. It's all about Beijing. But the Chinese perspective is we don't have a lot of control. We don't have a lot of insight. If we push them hard, it might not work. They might escalate. If that happens, it hurts us much more than the Americans.
And then you got refugees coming into China from North Korea.
Yeah, exactly. So there are reasons the Chinese have chosen not to take these steps well before Trump's pressure. But if you look at the Trump administration, with the exception of Gary Cohn, National Economic Council, just about everyone thinks the U.S. should be pressuring China more. And I'm increasingly hearing that from American CEOs, too, that they don't have as much access as they used to. Chinese companies are stronger.
And that's true. You know, look at financial services. I mean, there are certain industries within China that are deemed off limits to foreigners.
Correct.
You can't go and start up a business and own the whole business in China if you're an American company. You'll only get a joint venture, 49%. So they don't give U.S. companies access. They know the potential power of their 1.3 billion people.
You look at the most exciting companies right now in America in the tech sector. You look at the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Googles, and they don't really have a business model for China, right? That's a real problem for our economy. And if you talk to someone like Steve Bannon, Trump's chief strategist, his perspective is confrontation is coming with China sooner or later. We're much more powerful than they are now. So if that's the case, the fight should be while we have the advantage, not while not when China is going to be in a better position to do something about it. So, I mean, they're pushing very hard to say, let's hit these guys with tariffs. Let's raise the military ante in the region. Let's show them they can't continue to walk on allies in the South China Sea. That's a dangerous thing for us to do. It could go badly, but there is a logic to it. And I think it's a mistake to simply say that escalation against China is always a bad thing. The problem that Trump has is if you want to take that strategy, you really want your allies in Asia to be as well disposed towards you as possible. Now, the fact that Trump had ripped up the Trans-Pacific Partnership, for example, the fact that Trump has not been seen as suitably consistent for many of the allies in Southeast Asia, for example, I think makes it harder for Trump to effectively push the Chinese. Not impossible, but more of an uphill task.
That's a great point. Let me ask you about global markets, because there seem to be a lot of hot spots right now. I mean, wow, you know, what kind of reaction should we expect? You've got North Korea here, you've got Russia there, you've got China here. All these hot spots right now in the U.S., global markets have not really reacted much to all of these hot spots. Do you expect the global markets to start paying attention to the news coming out of this G20 summit?
Look, I think that the North Korea issue is a direct and dramatic one for South Korea, and you have started to see some depression of South Korean markets as a consequence of that. I think that in Qatar, the markets have taken a big dive. Why? Because of the Saudi Arabia-led blockade against them. So, but these are very narrow issues. The United States equity markets, you know, doing exceptionally well right now. And I think there are two reasons for that. The first is that we're actually much more insulated from these geopolitical issues than the countries on the front lines. Canada, Mexico, big bodies of water, you know, we're actually increasingly self-sufficient for energy and food. We've got the technology complex. So in a world that's very unstable, the U.S. continues to look more and more like a flight to safety.
Wow.